Hi, this is Jesse making another video about networking for LAN games over the internet. Specifically, this video is going to talk about Radmin, some of the pros and cons, as well as a potential alternative. And we'll be looking at it from the standpoint of Cosmonarchy, which is a Brood War overhaul, but the same principles would apply for Brood War or really any other game where you're playing a LAN style connection over the WAN connection. So a popular solution for this has been Radmin VPN. And Radmin VPN has a lot going for it. It's free, easy to use, has a great UI. It is a peer-to-peer network interface. So although your control traffic is handled via their servers, the actual connections are peer-to-peer in nature. Not sure if that's true for broadcast, but in any case, unicast traffic is peer-to-peer in nature, which is a big win for this kind of LAN emulation, if you will. That being said, there are a few downsides to Radmin VPN, mostly in the security realm. So for one, anyone can join as long as they have the network name and password. There's no additional security beyond that. Now, of course, you want it to be easy to join for a multiplayer game, but the problem with that implementation is there's not really a good way to remove a user from the network. So for instance, imagine there's a user that's disgruntled. Maybe they had a game that they are not happy about the result on. Maybe they have some angst against the project, whatever the case may be. If a user is in this network, what are some of the things that they can do to disrupt the other users or cause trouble? You could execute port scans. You could do things like port floods, where you're disrupting, essentially providing a denial of service attack for other users in the network. And you might think that that's easy to handle. If you got a bad actor, go ahead and remove them from the network, which you can do for a network you control. You can right click on it, click remove. The problem is that user can join right back up instantly. There's no IP banning, IP blocking, anything like that. There's no way to remove someone more permanently. If I click remove here, I will instantly be able to rejoin from that computer by just clicking join again, entering the username and password. So you can imagine a scenario where there's a tournament going on or some other kind of high stakes situation. Someone wants to be a pain and cause some trouble. It could really be difficult to remediate that situation. You may have to basically kill the network and create a new one. There's a determined threat actor there. It's going to be very difficult to allow new users to that network without that user getting back in. So that's the challenge there. Again, I think Radmin has a lot of really good things going for it. Really like Radmin. I think it works well for now. It's probably a good thing for the foreseeable future for this particular project, but wanted to explore some options in the future. So that brings us to Zero Tier. Now, Zero Tier is very similar to Radmin in that it's a central control peer-to-peer VPN. In other words, the traffic is not all going to the server. The server is simply orchestrating connections between peers. So when you have multiple users on there, let's say you have a control server that's in North America and you have 2 users in Europe, those users will have a peer-to-peer connection. All of their traffic is not routing through North America. In that case, it's going to take the closer path directly between those users. So Zero Tier is excellent from the performance standpoint, but it has 2 great things over Radmin and a couple of downsides. So let's talk the positives first. The first positive is that they do have an open source offering. That means that it is essentially free to use their control server. You do not have to subscribe to any kind of paid service from Zero Tier. You can self-host it. So that could either be on a home server or a VPS somewhere in the world. And because the VPN network is peer-to-peer in nature, there's not a whole lot of traffic going to and from that control server. So it really could be a very cheap, very low-powered server. There could even be some redundancy baked in. And of course, that also means that it's very difficult for the service to be removed from access, right? Radmin could say, hey, we're not going to do this free thing anymore at any given time, and that would be the end of that. Whereas Zero Tier, open source, even if the company goes out of business, you won't get security patches, etc. But the software is open source. Somebody else could take it on. You're not going to lose access to it. The other thing from a security standpoint that I think is very important is you can add limits to the connectivity of the network. Now, Radmin claims that they have done some blocking of basic Windows services to provide security, but you can't really find any information on their website about what they specifically are blocking. That's probably good for security, a little bit of obfuscation there, but there's really no way to say, hey, I don't want XYZ service or port to work over this network. Now, Zero Tier, on the other hand, provides a very robust flow control rules language that allows you to really set some robust rules. So, for instance, for Cause Monarchy, I've set up this sample rule set, and there's probably better ways to set this up, but we're dropping any traffic that's not standard IPv4 or 6 or ARP. We are accepting ping. And then we are also accepting UDP 6111 through 6119. So this is really all that's needed for Cause Monarchy, is accepting these requests and allowing these particular ports and then dropping everything else means that this network is extremely limited in terms of what kind of traffic that you could send over it. And that's a good thing when you're trying to have a single use type network. And of course, since it's self-hosted, you can also do things like apply firewall rules on the control server to block specific users, even potentially have automated blocking mechanisms for potential bad actors. All right, so that's the upside. I think the Zero Tier is excellent from that standpoint. Really like the flow rules. There's a lot more you can do. You can have macros. You can have additional logic put into the flow control. It's not just port and protocol blocking. But let's talk about some downsides. So the first is the user interface is a lot more limited than Radmin. Radmin has this nice user interface that shows your networks, your users, that you can hover for the ping, that kind of thing. Zero Tier just has this little commandlet in the taskbar that shows what network you are connected to, your address, the network address, the address of your machine, and various routes, etc. So this is good from a control standpoint, but it doesn't give you anything about peer discovery and your ping to the peers, that kind of thing. Now, again, there are APIs available, so I think we could fairly easily replicate an interface like this. And that's something that I'm going to try and work on, independent of whether it's used for this project. I think it would be a nice value add to have an interface like this. You could even do things like, for instance, do a ping map where you have multiple users in a connection. Let's say you've got 3 users. You could have the ping between all 3 of them so that you have a good sense of the entire network and visualize that. So you can also do things like do a port mirroring, so you can actually capture all the traffic and do troubleshooting, things of that nature. That would be nice to have. It doesn't have that today. The other challenge is with Windows systems, you have broadcast traffic going out only a single interface typically. So Windows uses a interface priority to decide which interface to send broadcast traffic out. Typically, the highest priority is going to be your wired connection or wireless connection. Windows counts those as the most likely connections to be using broadcast over, and anything that thinks of as a WAN connection or as a public connection is a lower priority. Now, what appears to happen with Radmin is it raises its priority level, so it changes its priority to 1. Now that's all well and good, except what that also means is all your other broadcast traffic is also going out that connection. And that can cause security and privacy problems. For instance, I did a PCAP using Wireshark on this Radmin network. I was able to see which users had Dropbox installed because the Dropbox broadcast traffic was sent over the network. And you can imagine any number of different services that expect to be local that might be sending broadcast traffic, which is now going over Radmin. And that could expose potentially private information about the individual over that network. So how could we do something a little bit better for Zero Tier or really any other VPN? Well, there's an application available called ForceBind IP. And the way ForceBind IP works is it injects itself into an application, uses DLL injection to essentially cause the application to send all traffic, broadcast or otherwise, down a certain interface. So essentially we can force Cause Monarchy to send all of its traffic over the Zero Tier network. Now, the usage of force bind IP is pretty simple. If you're just going to run it in a shortcut or perhaps from the command line, you essentially just call force bind IP with the IP address that is mapped to the interface you want to use, and then the application that you want to run. And so then that application will be forced to use that interface. How can we make that easy with Cause Monarchy? Well, this is a first draft, so there's probably better ways to do this, but I created a PowerShell script that will read the IP address of the zero tier interface, and then it will launch force bind IP with the IP address and the correct executable. So we're just following that instruction from the website. Now, I did add a little bit of extra logic in here so we can load either the pre-release or the release versions of Cause Monarchy, and then created shortcuts that will essentially call that PowerShell script with either pre or not pre selected in the shortcut. That means that installing this for Cause Monarchy is as simple as copy pasting these shortcuts, the force bound IP executable in DLL, and the PowerShell script into the same folder as Cause Monarchy. All right, so now when I open up the CMBAW pre-release shortcut that I've made here, and I've got a Wireshark going for this interface, by the way. So I go ahead and open that up. You can see, if I go to multiplayer UDP, we'll just create a game here. And now traffic is coming across that interface. And of course, I can join from my other computer here. It's on a different network. And as you can see, that traffic is flowing just fine over that network, even though we haven't overridden the interface priority or done anything else. And again, looking at this Wireshark here, I actually see that the only traffic that is making it over that interface is the UDP packets for Cause Monarchy. We've got the ARP packets and the MDNS traffic that's needed to make the initial connection. So we don't have a bunch of other random traffic. Again, if I run a capture on the Radmin network, we see all kinds of different traffic, including traffic that has nothing to do with Cause Monarchy. All right, so in summary, I think Radmin is just fine today. I think Radmin is an okay option. It's making things very easy for users. It's making things very quick. But it does have those downsides from a security and privacy perspective that hopefully will never be an issue, but you never know. We got to think about things like this. Right? Where do we go from here? Well, one of the things that I'm investigating is if there's any better way to force Cause Monarchy to connect via the correct interface as opposed to using force bind IP. Also would really love a way to auto deploy this through perhaps the launcher. And again, I'd like to make a little applet that shows pings and gives you visualization of the individual users and what the speed is between each connection. I think there's some really interesting things we could do from that perspective. But from a minimum viable product, I can provide this shell script as well as the shortcuts and pretty much deploy this for immediate testing for anyone that wants to give it a try. I think it might be an interesting option to explore. In any case, thanks for listening to my rant about networking. Hopefully this was interesting information and gives you an idea of how this could work in the future.